Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
So Declan brought this up yesterday. Worth expanding on here on Mackie and Judd on a Tuesday here. Daily Minnesota sports, entertainment, speculation, therapy, celebration when warranted. So we're already getting some NBA 2022-23 season win total over-unders from the sports books. And I think some of the sports books are waiting because, we're like 2 weeks into the league year. Durant is probably going to get traded, and there's some big moves still floating around out there. So a lot of sports books don't have the Nets on the board. Some don't. There's a couple other teams that aren't on the board. But, gentlemen, 49.5 from PointsBet is the over-under that's floated around this week for the Timberwolves. Here are the only teams in the NBA that have a higher or an equal or higher win total to the Timberwolves, 49.5. The Heat at 49.5. The Grizzlies, Sixers, Warriors, and Nuggets all at 50.5. The Bucks at 51.5. Suns and Clippers both at 52.5. And Celtics at 55.5. So how does it land with you guys that the Wolves right now are tied for the 9th best over-under win total, according to at least the PointsBet sportsbook?
I think it lands probably extremely fair. And look, in this case, for this franchise, this is why I think the Gobert trade made sense. Because this is where this team needs to take another step. And were they going to do it as currently constituted? I think that the people that run this team looked at the first round playoff loss to the Grizzlies and said, absolutely not. Like, it's a good team, but it still needs more. And so, yeah, I think 49 and 1/2, while exciting because it's rare, is also extremely fair. And I think that falls right around where the Wolves should be. And again, as we talked about on Monday's show as well, I also think that it indicates that this team clearly with the Gobert trade has, or should have, taken a step from being a play-in tournament type team to being a solid playoff team that's not going to have to be concerned with that one round of the playoffs. So, yeah, I think Vegas, as they almost always do, is correct.
Well, they were way off last year, as we pointed out.
Yeah.
But
That's
I
true.
think
they do a good job across the board.
They do generally. There's some last year was such an obvious outlier. This one feels a lot more honed. So I know, Dex, you said you'd take the over yesterday. How does it, now that we've painted the landscape here of, they're like 9th. They're tied for 9th right now.
Mm-hmm. Basically, can they be a 50-win team? And I think as currently assembled, they are a 50-win team. That they have arguably the best starting five, one of the best starting fives, I should say, in the NBA at this point. Some teams are going to come down. Some teams are going to come back up to in the NBA. We brought up the fact that Phoenix might come down to earth a little bit. Chris Paul gets another year older. And also, to be honest, they just have overachieved the last 2 years kind of to a degree with their win total in the NBA. So naturally, that tells me regression's probably coming to them. Are the Lakers going to be as bad as they were? They might rise up a little bit. But the respect of the Timberwolves, I think, going from a 34.5 win team last year from Vegas to now a 49.5, I mean, that's a significant jump. I wonder if we legitimately go back and saw the biggest jumps from last year's over-under total to this one. I have to imagine 16.5 wins from the Wolves has to be like number one compared to where they were last year. So, yeah, I think constructed-wise, they should be a 50-win team. And if they're less than a 50-win team, either something went catastrophically wrong or a significant injury happened to one of those three core players.
Yeah, is there a chance that somebody could get hurt and they only win 45 or 46 and they're a play-in team? Yeah, their injuries could factor in here. If everyone's healthy, I agree. I think it's a 50-win team. And this is the thing that kind of bothers me the most about the national backlash about the Rudy Gobert trade. There's a few different things that people point out. Can they play together, right? And you don't have to account for them on offense. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is people saying, well, this was their move, and now they're all in with no other chess moves for the next 4 years, which is incorrect. Now, you'd have to get creative to trade future draft picks because you'd have to probably acquire a future draft pick to give yourself a chance to trade a future draft pick. So I get that you're a little more handcuffed salary cap wise and trade chip wise to make moves. But you've opened up back-to-back winning windows here. And this is what people aren't talking about. So by making this trade, maybe you're not going to win a championship in the next 4 years, although we could have that conversation. Maybe that's a fun conversation to have. But you've opened up a 4-year window with Rudy Gobert to where you're going to win 50-ish games, maybe more, on a regular basis if everyone's healthy. And the problem is less about can you win 50 games in the regular season and get into the playoffs. The problem's more what happens when you run into a small ball lineup that can just sort of run circles around you and stretch your defense, right? And I'm willing to confront that problem, having watched this franchise for 30 years. I'll cross that bridge when we come to it, all right? But the first window is the Gobert window. They're going to be relevant. What no one's talking about is the second window, which opens up in 2026, 27, I guess it would be. And that's the Anthony Edwards emerging into his prime window, coming off of 5 years of relevant, likely playoff basketball and experience. That's the window that I'm the most intrigued by, because he's going to be 25 years old when Rudy Gobert's current 4-year max contract, supermax contract, runs out.
Right.
And Anthony Edwards will almost certainly sign a 5-year max contract that kicks in 2 years from now. So he's going to have like 2 or 3 years left on his Timberwolves contract, entering his prime, and the Wolves have Gobert coming off the books. People are acting like this is the final chess piece. They moved too early. This is going to cap their... No, this is going to make them relevant for 4 years and give Anthony Edwards, emerging into his prime, playoff-tested experience. And maybe even a trip deep in the playoffs at some point that, maybe they overachieve before he hits his prime, which is something that no one's accounting for. So I think I love the two sort of back-to-back windows here that they have created here starting this year.
So I think the part that people have missed, though, about the trade immediately is if we're talking about the opportunity that exists within particular windows to win, it's this one. You're forcing the cat window open. You're basically, I can't articulate this enough. You are basically telling Cat, you don't have to do the things you don't like to do now. You can focus on what you are good at. So I feel like it's taking the Ant, what we're going to get to your point, Phil, with Ant, and we're going there with Cat right now, because there's no reason on God's green earth that Karl Anthony Towns should not be a phenomenal player on far more of a consistent basis probably than he is now. And he's damn good. So like, it's not like, man, my God, he's been a bust. He has not been. But if you think about what Gobert is going to bring for Cat and the opportunity, and that's why I don't understand this. It feels like we're really stuck on, it's Twin Towers, it's two bigs. What are you going to do with two bigs? And I keep saying, I don't see Cat as a big. I see Cat as this unique player. To your point, again, he is a phenomenal three-point shooter. He does things that most big men could never do. And so I actually think within this, you've opened up different opportunities. The only reason why, and look, it's not parallel completely, but I think that there are similarities to look back on that slow our roll a little bit, is this. This is a little bit what the Wild tried to do by forcing things open with the Parisi and Suter contracts. The problem with those is they were 13 years, and you were basically stuck, as we are finding out now. The other thing is, and this is where I think Conley probably gets it and Fletcher and Leopold didn't, is the Wolves have two centerpieces right now, Cat and Ant, and eventually Ant. They sort of have potential Kaprizovs in place. And the issue with Parisi and Suter was, you said, here are mega contracts, you're good, we're not, you're going to be helpful, but you didn't have the centerpiece on the table to feature them with, right? The Timberwolves sort of have that. And so I like the shot that's being taken here because Gobert is a star. Gobert is very good, but Cat and Ant are probably your meal tickets. And now you're putting them with a guy who's going to help them, and especially Cat. But I think the whole Cat thing to me is the most intriguing thing off the bat of what he should do now. And we will find out now exactly how far Cat can take his talents, because it could be off the charts.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is kind of it's a move for Cat to maximize his peak years because he's in his prime right now. And it's also a move to put some relevant pieces next to Anthony Edwards, because what was the number one complaint about the Kevin Garnett era? That they spent like 8 or 9 years. So Marbury gets traded in 1999, and then I guess it was like a 4-year gap of KG just carrying Wally Zerbiak and Anthony Peeler to the playoffs. And then they landed, it was 1 year of Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell, but then they left, and there was 2 or 3 more years of dormancy. They could never just put relevant pieces around Kevin Garnett. And so whether you're looking at Cat as the centerpiece or Ant as the centerpiece, I think just putting relevant pieces next to those guys and around them is good. Maybe it's not perfect, but you're the Timberwolves. You don't get to just choose them. Here are 5 options. Let's choose the most perfect one.
Not many teams do.
Right.
That's correct.
They look to add a key piece, a generationally great defender. And I think if you look at, this isn't apples to apples, but if you look at recent NBA history, the last 20 or 25 years, when you get a star young player, whether you think it's Cat or Ant or both in this case,
sure.
Look at the Spurs. So, drafted Tim Duncan or had David Robinson already, and they landed Tim Duncan luckily in the draft, but they were able to put those two guys together. And then Robinson retires after their first championship. Okay, let's and this was all like internally built by the Spurs. Let's go get a Tony Parker, and then let's go get a Manu Ginobili and a Kawhi Leonard. Again, all of this was built through the draft, so it's apples to oranges. The Miami Heat, though. Okay, we have Dwayne Wade on our team. What can we do with Dwayne Wade? Let's go get him Shaq for a minute and then win a championship. Okay, Shaq's old. He's done. Let's spend a couple years figuring out what's next, right? Okay, now let's bring in LeBron and Chris Bosh and do it again. And there's so many examples around the league of you find your young superstar, Kobe Bryant with the Lakers, pair him up with Shaq, or vice versa, I guess, in the 90s. And then Shaq gets traded to the Heat. And so now let's go find Pau Gasol and put him in Lamar Odom, right? You just keep iterating around your young star players. This is just the first iteration of what to put next to Cat and Ant. And in 3 or 4 years, there might be another iteration that's different or better or smaller or whatever it is. But the goal is to, when you have guys like Cat and Ant, to just put awesome pieces around them and see what clicks and what doesn't. And there's so many people that are like, but the draft pick, but what about the 2020? I don't care. But what if it doesn't work? Well, what if you don't make the trade and you whiff on the draft picks?
But that's my question. What's working? If you are flat out going to say right now, it's probably not going to work. It might not work. I want to know your definition, because these are the Timberwolves. So, if your definition is, well, if we do not have an LOB within 2 years, it's a failure. I got bad news for you. It probably won't work. If you say, I want this team to be fun, relevant, and in the playoffs, firmly too, not the 8 seed, not the 10 trying to get in, but a firm playoff team, and they're not, that's, in my opinion, disappointing and not working. But I think when we talk about not working or it's all going to fall apart, what's going to happen, you have to come back to one fundamental thing. Who are we talking about? We're talking about the Timberwolves.
Yeah. What if in the second round of the playoffs, they meet a small ball lineup that they can't handle and get beaten 6 games in the second round of the playoffs? I say, okay. So they got to the second round of the playoffs, you're saying?
Right.
For the second time in franchise history, going back to 1989? Yes. We will sign up for that and then tweak the roster as needed going forward.
I think the parallel that Judd was also making there with the Wild and comparing it to the Parise-Suter era, and this is the worst case scenario. This is not what you want to have happen, but it's similar, is when the Wild signed Thomas Vanek. So the Wild signed Vanek in year 3 of the Parise and Suter era. And Vanek, a decorated goal scorer. I know we're comparing centers in basketball to goal scorers in hockey here, but they thought this is our one last piece. We got to the second round the year before. Vanek's going to be that natural goal scorer that pushes us over the top, and we're not going to get just to the second round. We're going to run to the Western Conference Finals, go to Cups, and obviously then it drastically Vanek was very underwhelming. That team still went to the second round with Vanek in his first year. But at the same time, the Wild were still relevant. In the short term, it was still relevant. Long term, it didn't work out for the Wild. But I think with Rudy Gobert's skill set, it works. And they're not asking Rudy Gobert to be the number one guy. They're asking Rudy Gobert to do a very specific thing. And Vanek wasn't a worker for the Wild. Vanek just was like, all right, I got my money. I have scored a bajillion goals in the NHL. I'm back home. peace out. I'm good. I'm going to take my time here. Where I think with the Gobert trade, he is a secondary piece. He's a very important secondary piece because he's going to open up your defense and make things a lot easier too for your offense as well. But that is the fear, that it becomes kind of a Thomas Vanek situation where then they never really achieved what they were set out to do.
But they're taking shots. Like the one thing that you
Correct.
can't fault the Wild for is, it didn't work out. They never even made it to a conference championship. And at the end of the day, it was probably a failure because of that. But man, like they took swings. They took swings at Parisi and Suter. They took swings at Vanek. They made trades for guys like Pominville. I mean, they were in the ring throwing haymakers at trade deadlines and mortgaging future assets. And guess what? They never really tanked. It's not like they ever stripped it down and became what the Blackhawks are now. No, obviously the Blackhawks won championships, and it would have been nice. Right. So I think you can look at the Wild and say they were hunting for championships. They probably just had a glass ceiling because Parisi and Suter weren't good enough for the money they were making and for the length of their contracts. Mm-hmm. And so the Timberwolves are hunting. I love it. I love the fact, are they as good as the Celtics? No. But there are steps to be taken, especially in the NBA. Sometimes in the NHL, you can put together a team and have a hot goaltender and make a deeper run than you thought. That's not really how it works in the NBA. You need to go step by step by step. You got to have preferably a young, great wing player, which the Wolves have in Anthony Edwards, and take your lumps. And I think Chris Finch and Tim Connolly put their heads together for the 5 minutes they were together before Gobert was traded to the Wolves and said, man, the Pelicans are going to get better. The Lakers are probably going to be a little healthier next year. Damian Lillard's coming back with the Blazers. So there's a few, and the Clippers are going to add Kawhi back. So there's 4 teams behind us that are all going to try and get better here. We run the risk, if we don't do something, of not even making the playoffs, or maybe not even, I don't think they were in danger of falling out of the play-in, but of taking a step back.
And from a basketball and business standpoint, that's a bad idea. Like they have finally captured, I feel like, the sports fan again in this town for the first time in a long time. And I feel like it's real now. It's not just the cult of Wolves fans. So I think to explore this topic a little bit more too, I think this show, the three of us agree completely on this. We like swings. I'm rarely going to criticize unless a team does something that's just stupid, like trading for a pitcher with a bad arm, and then it turns out that he needs Tommy John. I think that we ordinarily fall in line with Parisi and Suter, over to Cousins, over to Gobert, take your shot. The most important thing, I think, and this is where it becomes tough, and we've broached this a little bit so far, is knowing when to pivot off of it. That's my problem. I feel personally, and who knows? Hopefully I'm proven wrong. I feel like now we've seen enough of Kirk where I personally would pivot. That does not mean I think it was a mistake to take a swing. And so I really hesitate with all that we complain and moan in this town about our teams. I don't want to say, well, I mean, you gave up those draft picks. But the most important thing is, if it doesn't work, and it's very clear 3 years in or so, is having the guts to say, we took a shot, didn't work, let's go in this direction.
Yep. And that's the other thing too. Let's say this doesn't work to whatever extent. And I think the floor is very high. To me, doesn't work isn't like, oh my God, they're going to win 38 games. I think the doesn't work is more, they can't go as deep in the playoffs as they will, or as they want to. Okay, so after 2 years of it, you've got a 32-year-old, probably at that point, if he's eroding a little bit, overpaid Rudy Gobert, but certainly not someone that you couldn't move. I don't think he's just going to fall off a cliff in the next 2 years. But you'll also have Karl Anthony Towns in his prime. So if you really needed to, you could say, okay, Anthony Edwards, we're gonna push forward into the Anthony Edwards era officially. This thing kind of hit a wall. We're gonna trade one or both of our big men for other assets. And that's 2 or 3 years out if it doesn't work. But there's chess moves to be made. There's another positive here for the Timberwolves, and Declan kind of alluded to it a few minutes ago that I want to run by you guys as you look at the window in the Western Conference. But first, a shout out to our friends at Equity Partners. So one of the co-owners of Equity Partners, his name is Ryan. He's going to be on Purple Daily. Write that down. this week on Wednesday. And what they have done at Equity Partners is they have made the process of selling your home and the timing of getting into a new home completely hassle-free. So with their We Have program, they will partner with you to fix up your home before you put it on the market, anything from simple fixes to total remodels. And you can move before you sell, which is a huge thing when it comes to timing it up, right? You can put offers in on your next home non-contingent on the sale of yours, which is huge. Find out more at equitypartnersmn.com. Equitypartnersmn.com. It's also golfing season. In fact, I'm going to go get a lesson tomorrow because my swing, I tried to fix my swing with like YouTube videos, and now I'm just like stuck between my old swing and what I want my new swing to be. And it's a disaster, Declan. Bad news.
Yeah, my TikTok algorithm, it's 95% golf swing tutorials. And then when I'm on the course, I'm trying to remember 1,000 of those things. And you know what? It's nice to know that, but you know what you could do is you could also book a lesson. You could also go down to Golf at Meadows at Mystic Lake and do that as well. They have a full-service golf shop. They obviously have their award-winning 18-hole public course. You can book that tee time at golfthemeadows.com to learn more. And also, the Legends are coming back. The Land O'Lakes Legends Classic Golf Tournament is Saturday and Sunday, August 13th and 14th. World Hall of Fame members in Nancy Lopez, Amy Alcott, Julie Inkster. Find out more at legendsclassicmn.com, legendsclassicmn.com, and golfthemeadows.com to learn more about that tee time.
So back to these over-unders for a second here on the Timberwolves. So the Timberwolves, 49.5. If you just look at the Western Conference teams in and around the Timberwolves, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, the Nuggets are all 50.5, just a win above the Timberwolves. Suns and Clippers are at 52.5. And then right below the Timberwolves are the Mavericks at 47.5, Pelicans 44.5, Blazers 40.5. And then the Lakers are off the board right now because there's all sorts of trade rumors and whatnot. So there's 9 teams that are either above or slightly below the Timberwolves. So call it 10 fairly relevant teams in the Western Conference. And then you got like the Rockets and the Kings, kind of the Oklahoma City, the rebuilding crew. If you start to go through these teams, the 9 teams that are relevant and fighting for a play-in spot, the Lakers, LeBron James, going to turn 38 years old this year. The Warriors, definitely still in the middle of a dynasty, toward the back end of the dynasty, but Steph Curry turns 35 this season. 35.
Wow.
Looks like he's 23 still. Klay Thompson's going to turn 33 with wear and tear of devastating injuries adding up. You know.
But Wiggy. They got Wiggy in his prime now.
For one more year anyways. They got Wiggy. So he goes and breaks the bank somewhere else.
Happy and just going to be content.
Suns, Chris Paul, 37 years old. Now, they have a lot of really good young players that, they're not going to go off a cliff completely when Chris Paul's done. So don't get me wrong. But the Clippers, again, the Clippers are probably the team to beat if healthy this year in the West. But Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, both in their 30s. Some injuries that have added up, especially with Kawhi. The Blazers are not as good as the Timberwolves, but even if they take a step forward, Damian Lillard is a worn 32. I mean, that dude has a ton of usage on him. So those teams are going to age out unless they make a bunch of big tweaks. I don't think the Suns are going to fully age out because, they're pretty loaded with young talent. And that kind of leaves the Mavericks with Luka. You're going to be dealing with Luka for a long time in the Western Conference, but they have yet to put a viable partner next to him or team around. It's kind of the Luka show. And I think right now the Timberwolves are a better team than the Mavericks. The Mavericks have the best player, but the Timberwolves are a better team. You'll be dealing with Jokic, who's only 27 years old, MVP guy, right? And Ja Morant, I think, although he might be one of those high-usage small players, too, that once the Energizer Bunny hop goes away in the late 20s, early 30s. But he's a long way from that. So you're going to have to deal with him in the Western Conference. And the Pelicans, I think, totally depends on Zion. Can he stay healthy? Is he even going to be in New Orleans long-term, in a year or two from now? Are they going to trade him?
Right.
So as you start to take the Lakers and the Warriors and the Clippers, I'm looking like a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road as Ant emerges into his prime.
Yep.
This thing sets up. I'm not saying the Wolves are going to be competing with the Warriors for a title this year, but this thing sets up really nicely in a 5 to 6 year window for the Timberwolves to be kind of taking one of those top 3 spots in the West on a consistent basis, dare I say.
If all goes well, yes. But here's the thing. So Golden State is so well run. I'm curious what they do. Like, I could see them. They are an incredibly well run, team.
The Spurs have been well run too. Jeff.
Exactly. But I mean, I could see Golden State replenishing or doing something. I loved last season. Just be awful. Just bench Steph, be like, screw it, we're going to lose as much. That's the genius of sports, is knowing when to pull the ripcord on a season entirely. But yeah, I mean, I think if the Timberwolves, if all goes well, and keep in mind too, so this depends, I really believe, on Cat and Ant. Like, we're going to talk about Gobert because he cost a ton, and that's fine. But the reality is, like, when you're talking about a window that is let's say 4 to 5 years out, that is more of Ant, where is Cat gone. Gobert certainly is going to help right now and can set a tempo or help set one. But like, if you look at what it takes to win in this league, and if you look at what the Wolves currently have and the development of the players potentially there, who again are star to potential superstar players, yeah, I think that they're in good shape. The other question is this, though. Can you get to a point, if this Gobert thing works, and let's say the Wolves take off, let's say they're a 4 seed this year, which I think is tough but possible, can you also, in the next 5 years, convince like one more really good player eventually to join it? Because like, that's the thing, right? Like if you could ever, I don't think it's ever going to be gone completely, but if you could reduce the Timberwolves tax, like if you're to a point where players are like, okay, it's cold there and it sort of sucks, but that team is good. And for instance, they've got a new building, like they've got new this and new that. I think that what Conley has done very smartly, and again, I think this is really driven by the fact that Laurie and A-Rod want to change the face of this franchise completely, which is very smart. I think what they are doing is they are putting a new spin on this team entirely, so that the Ma and Pa Wolves are now going to be gone. And I think that is going to be reflected around the league. And it only takes one or two good players to say, I love Ant, I love Cat, I'd like to join it.
They've already turned the Wolves into Shark Tank. I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank on CNBC late at night, just binging episodes.
You and Mark Cuban?
And it's like, I could never see Glenn Taylor on that show, ever. But I could see Mark Laurie. Hell, A-Rod's on that show sometimes. You know, it's just kind of, they just came in right away and they said, all right, enough of this. Yeah, like you said, enough of this mom and pop stuff. Listen, we'll do what we need to do. We'll go down to Mankato and we'll eat some potato salad and some lasagna and get some paper signed.
And we knew that at the time. We talked about that.
But then we'll eventually sort of just do what we want to do, which is run the show here. They have done a masterful job at building a great relationship with Glenn. Glenn, we love you. Oh, thank you so much. May I have another helping of that? What is that, a mustard-based potato salad? Oh, my gosh. I have to get the recipe so I can make it at home, Glenn. Oh, by the way, what do you think if we just start kicking the tires on a couple president of basketball operations?
Can I have another brat, Becky? Mrs. Taylor?
They have done a masterful job massaging that relationship and basically getting what they want here in the first year of their minority ownership.
It's not necessarily fair, okay? But Dave Benz was a sacrificial lamb because they basically said, we want to bring in, and I guarantee they're going to get one, a national type guy.
Did you hear who the latest is?
Who's that?
Charlie Walters threw it out there.
Oh, Gus Johnson.
Gus Johnson.
I floated that first.
Judd actually had it first.
When did you float that?
Reckless speculation. Zolgad's Roundup last week, and I labeled it. This is reckless speculation. But Gus Johnson makes perfect sense here.
Did you float that as an idea, or did you float that with
idea.
a little birdie?
No. I floated it as an idea because it makes perfect sense.
Okay, but is Shooter just kind of like, is he reading your stuff and saying it's a good idea?
Or I love Shooter's column. I hope he is. I'm honored.
Is he sourcing it? Does he have someone telling him? There's a little birdie telling him.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I love that column. Every other Sunday Pioneer Press, my favorite column.
The young whippersnapper Timberwolves fans who consume our podcast and YouTube channel, you might not remember, but Gus Johnson was one of the Timberwolves play-by-play guys in 1996-97, Kevin Garnett's second year in the NBA. MSC? In fact, I think he was the play-by-play guy for Stephon Marbury's first year. Him and Kevin Harlan and Chad Hartman were kind of
Chad
in the mid-90s mix.
I want to say Chad was the analyst on MSC with Gus when Gus did play-by-play. But I just think that these guys are at every turn, right or wrong, at every turn they are trying to make splashes because this team for far too long never made a splash.
Okay, so on that exact topic of a splash, so apparently there's a clip, and I'm about to play it right now. There's a clip going around of DeMarcus Cousins. I think this is at Summer League. I saw
this, yeah.
And Tim Connolly walks by.
Yeah. I love that.
Right there. But
Hey.
the league doesn't even post up anymore. You get more post ups from.
Tap in.
So that was Tim Connolly that walked by, and Boogie gave him the call me.
So the backstory there is Tim Connolly was in Denver, obviously, and they had DeMarcus Cousins for the whole year. No, because he was in Milwaukee for part of the year too.
Yeah.
So DeMarcus was in Denver for part of last year. Totally just a shell of himself in his early 30s after a torn ACL.
Yep.
But I look at that roster and think, well, they could use like one more big body off the bench for 10, 12, maybe 15 minutes here and there.
I would do it. Sign me up.
Very interesting.
Is he still a pain or no?
I mean, he's the last 2 years after he missed all of 2019-20 with a torn ACL, and he's been just a bench guy that plays 15 minutes a game, and he's played for some good teams. He played for the Clippers, he played for the Bucks, and played for the Nuggets. So he has accepted a bench role.
Okay.
At this point in his
if
career.
he's cool with it, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, can still knock down some shots. He can still do some things. Yeah, so last year between the Nuggets and the Bucks, he was 15 minutes a game. He gave you 9 points in those 15 minutes. He just came out just guns blazing in 15 minutes a game. But 9 points, 6 rebounds, couple assists, a steal, a block, and he shot 46%. And it's definitely worse players you could bring in for 15 minutes than DeMarcus Cousins on some sort of a veteran's minimum contract.
Absolutely.
Here for it. Are you guys in on Gus Johnson or no? Yay or nay on Gus Johnson replacing Dave Benz if that happens?
I think it'd be awesome. I love Gus.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
I love Gus.
I think
give me a Gus-gasm, baby.
An Anthony Edwards dunk and just watching.
Yeah.
What? He's just going to go nuts. He's going to go absolutely nuts.
It would be a blast. And all due respect to Dave Benz, but like if you're gonna let go Dave Benz, you're going to another level.
Correct.
Right? Like what would be the point of letting Dave Benz go if you're not going to like a recognizable national figure of some kind, right?
Exactly right. Mike Breen, lure him away from the Knicks.
Can you imagine?
Bang! He's unbelievable.
Probably put a phone call in, don't they? They put a phone call into Pat Riley to run the team.
That's incredible.
I know. These guys are big game hunting.
They have zero shame.
This is what I like, though. Like I'm not, but who are we in flyover country to say, oh, now you've gone too far, right? Like this is fun.
Kevin Harlan would be my dream. If we could get Kevin Harlan back in the mix.
Yeah.
And he does have a place in Door County, Wisconsin, so he definitely still has Midwest roots.
And I believe he still remains the play-by-play voice of the Packers in the preseason. Because his dad, Bob, was team president of the Packers for a long time. I did float out if you could get, and I think the Wolves did this in the early 2000s, if you could get Harlan for a package of games, I would take that. Like I think
did he do it?
He did a package of games. I want to say it was back when they were on Channel 29. But he did 10 games. And then the rest were done by a different person. I think Sean Grandy at the time. But anyway, But the point being is if you could get Harlan for any amount of games, I'm taking it because he is off the charts.
Yeah, he probably would because he's doing the national. He wouldn't be able to do like a Sunday afternoon game in October or November, December.
But I think he still loves the Wolves. And this team is good now, so it would actually be fun again.
I have a friend who ran into him at just a towny bar somewhere in Door County a couple years back, and my friend kind of walked up and said, hey, Kevin, I don't want to bother you. I'm a big fan, and Kevin went right in. I guess he's just I've never met him in person, but I guess he's just an all-time great guy. And just went into he's got that voice all the time. He's always talking like this. And he just asked my friend a bunch of questions about what do you think of the Timberwolves? What do you think they should do with Wiggins? I don't know about this move here. Like, he had a bunch of takes on the Timberwolves. Just,
Yeah.
I don't know, a couple cocktails in, a couple old fashions in at Tony Parker.
He's seriously fantastic. Like, I would take 10 games.
I think we can push for more.
Okay,
Let's push
I
for
take
20.
15.
Let's get 20.
I'll
20
take
games from
whatever we
Kevin
can
Harlan.
get from him.
It'd be funny if we just reverted back to the mid-'90s and it was like Kevin Harlan for 20 and Gus Johnson for 20, and then maybe Marnie can do 10. I don't know who fills in the rest, but